Hello and welcome. My name is Mike Butcher. I'm the editor-at-large for TechCrunch.com, the breaking news site about startups and venture capital. It's 2015, and it's a world where technology and venture and innovation is more crucial than ever before. It's been 5 years since the launch of Skolkovo, the Russian project to kickstart its innovation culture, to create, if you like, its own version of Silicon Valley. At the same time, Open Innovations, the country's biggest technology conference, will open on September the 28th. So now is as good a time as any to talk about innovation in Russia, how it can develop, and whether or not it can compete in a globalized world. Therefore, on this Google Hangout, we have assembled Dmitry Medvedev, the Prime Minister of Russia, together with a number of distinguished speakers to discuss this topic in a roundtable manner. Welcome, Prime Minister. We're here actually in the Hypercube in the Skolkovo Technology Park. I'd now like to introduce a range of international speakers who will be participating in this hangout. First of all, we'll just check that Rafael, Reif, President of the Massachusetts Institute of Technology, is able and online and there, sir. Are you there, sir?
I'm online and I'm able to participate. Thank you.
Fantastic. How are you today?
I'm doing great. Thank you. I'm very honored to be here in this conversation in the company of Prime Minister of Russia, Dmitry Medvedev.
Next up, we have Francis Gurry, who is the Director General of the World Intellectual Property Organization, or otherwise known as WIPO. How are you, Francis?
I'm very fine, thank you. And likewise, it's a great privilege to participate in this hangout with Prime Minister Dmitry Medvedev, to whom I send my warmest greetings.
Thank you, sir.
Hello.
Carlo Biondo is President of Strategic Partnerships in EMEA from Google, and he's in Paris. Hello there, Carlo.
I'm in Paris. Yes, sir. I'm in Paris. I'm very pleased and honored to be here at this video conference in presence of Prime Minister of Russia, Dmitry Medvedev, whom I thank very much.
Good day.
And from Japan, Yusuke Otsubo, the managing partner of the UMJ Russia Fund. Yusuke, how are you?
Hey, good evening from Tokyo. It is my great honor to participate in this conference.
Next up, Craig Barrett, the International Co-Chair of Skolkovo Foundation. How are you, sir?
Doing just fine, coming to you from Montana in the United States. It's been an interesting 5 years for the Skolkovo project. It's a pleasure to be with the Prime Minister again.
Thank you, sir. Louis Sanz, the Director General of International Association of Science Parks, is joining us also from Spain, I believe.
Yes, that's correct. I'm connecting from Spain. Good day to everybody. Good day to you, Mr. Prime Minister. It's nice to see you again. We met not so long ago in Skolkovo.
Excuse me, I have a slight cough. And finally, Ilya Sachkov, the Director General of Group IB, the cybersecurity company, a Russian cybersecurity company, also operating internationally, will also join us from London. Hello, Ilya.
Hello, everyone. Yes, I'm in London. It's a pleasure for me to be here online today. Thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you, gentlemen. And we will kick off this hangout with opening up the idea of concept of Skolkovo. Prime Minister, it's a historical fact that many of the world's biggest technology companies weren't developed in technology parks of this nature, but flourished in the wild, in garages and universities. Facebook came out of a bedroom in Harvard. Hewlett-Packard was launched in a garage. Apple was started in Steve Jobs' house with Steve Wozniak with barely any furniture. So why has the Russian government chosen to create the Skolkovo project? I think many people would like to hear from you how this came about and where it's going. It's a huge technology park. You've spent billions in the process. In fact, funding should total $15 billion through to 2020, much of it on infrastructure and buildings. But Skolkovo companies have not raised nearly as much themselves right now to this date. So why do you think this is the best way for Russia to nurture its innovation culture, Could you not simply re-energize legislation around business rules, entrepreneurship, broadband, venture, so that huge capital and infrastructure projects like this are not so needed, and these funds could be directed simply into startups themselves? I think it would be lovely to hear from you from that.
We have our own traditions, although everything developed in a similar way. Likewise, the startups you've mentioned. You see what a huge construction site it is, but just a short time ago it was a green field. Well, you can call it a greenfield project, or you can call it a garage project, but there was literally nothing in here. We started from scratch, literally. But this whole approach had its reasoning, because when we were discussing the opportunity of creating such a center as Skolkovo, we thought where to do it and how to do it, because Russia has many scientific centers to boast, and we could have used at least one of them to serve as the background, to serve as the base. Or we could have cooperated with one large corporation or with several corporations, but we specifically have chosen a greenfield site in order to create everything from scratch. Why we did it? Because we believe that we need to do a modern, a high-tech, an innovation center, which couldn't be matched by anything in this country. When Skolkovo is compared to Silicon Valley or to anything else, these are all, well, these comparisons are very simplified, because here in Russia we have our own specificities, we have our own mentality, we have our own business and scientific traditions. So we believed it is right to do it this way, it is right to do it close to Moscow, and it is right to do the Skolkovo project based on a PPP initiative with lots of public investments and attracting private companies to come in and join. And I think this is the right way, and it paid off. You see what kind of construction site is here. You see that some things are already operating very well, others are yet to be commissioned and soon to be launched. But in any case, in the end of the day, we'll get an innovation center of the global level, which has been developing quite actively for the last 5 years. And I'd like to use this opportunity to thank our colleagues, our partners to Skolkovo for the job they did and for the path they went on for the last 5 years. I'm pretty sure that we're making just our first steps, but we are on the way to success.
And you're also doing this very much as a big infrastructure project. But what about the startups that don't become part of the Skolkovo project? Will they still be welcomed with open arms?
You see, startups mean creativity. And today we have about 1,000 startups that are concentrated around Skolkovo or within its perimeter. Whether it's a lot or not, it's hard for me to judge, but I hope it's enough to create a critical mass to build upon it. Well, there will definitely be more. There are some startups that, well, don't get in Skolkovo, but it's not only this particular initiative, Skolkovo project, that does innovations in Russia. Actually, any startup has to pass several stages during its life cycle. Some of the startups prove to be feasible and prove to be livable in the end, others not. So I think it follows its own way, you know, like doctors say, and it follows a particular dynamics. And it's okay that today we have this number. As I see it, we still have lots of interesting technological startups and projects and solutions, and every time we meet here in this venue, I'm shown some of the results of what has been achieved by startups, and there are so many novelties in various industries and in various businesses that we believe are a priority for our country to continue to bring this culture forward.
And I understand the targets that you're setting are very big in terms of 40,000 offices, 20,000 residents. So it's a very, very big project, isn't it?
Масштабный проект.
It's
В России все масштабное.
it's a large-scale project, but Russia is a large-scale country. That's why one of the answers why we decided to build one particular Skolkovo and not try to distribute it or to scatter it across the country or to give this idea to different companies. We need a concentration. We need a concentration of intellect. We need a concentration of money. We need a concentration of decisions, and that's why Skolkovo jumped and took flight. Yes, lots of investments are made into here, but I'm pretty sure they will be worth it.
Well, very much in the vein of clustering and the way that many innovation clusters have developed around the world, from Silicon Valley to MIT in Boston to the London technology scene in the east of London. We're going to hear now from the MIT, from Rafael Reif, who has a question regarding how it maintains maintains ties with Western institutions. Rafael, let's hear from you.
The question is, how does MIT or Skoltech maintain ties with the Western institutions?
That's correct, yes. I believe you wanted to raise the question of where Skolkovos come from and where Skolkovo Tech goes next.
Yeah. Well, I think, first of all, I applaud the whole concept that Prime Minister Medvedev has started in Russia. I think any innovation ecosystem like Skolkovo is going to become, and has become already. When I heard that there are about 1,000 startups near Skolkovo, that's tremendous progress in such a short time. But any innovation ecosystem needs what I would call an educational and research institution at the core of it, and that's what Skoltech is becoming very quickly. So that is a necessary, not sufficient, but a necessary ingredient of innovation ecosystem. And Skoltech, in a little over 4 years, has gone from, as the Prime Minister said about the whole Skolkovo, from a concept to an institution that is already existing and collaborating and interacting with institutions like MIT and others. In a little over 4 years, has recruited dozens of faculty, high-quality faculty, have hundreds of students, already had its first group of students graduating, has 5 novel academic programs. It is really amazing what has happened in a short period of time. And I think the critical part right now, from the point of view of Skoltech and how it can contribute to the ecosystem, is to continue to attract the best talent that is innovative, that buys into this model, that understands the interaction, the interrelationship between education, research, and innovation. Talent attraction is at the core of the issue, and as long as Skoltech can maintain the ties and interactions with the Western world and finding the best talent within Russia, this project, I really believe, is going to be quite successful.
Do you have any reaction to that, Prime Minister?
Yes. Well, I'd like to do a couple of comments. First, I would like to thank Mr. Reif for such a high assessment of what has been done. And it has been done in cooperation and in collaboration. Let me remind you a little bit of history. We understood very well that such a large-scale innovation center that we conceived and we implemented here, close to Moscow, the Skolkovo project, cannot do without a special university educational establishment institution. We believed in the very beginning that Skoltech will serve as a very important chain in the link in the chain of the whole innovative concept. And we've discussed a couple of partners whom we can do this with, because we wanted to use best practices that have been generated abroad, how well to approach the construction of such an entity as Skoltech, and that's how we got MIT. And throughout this time, I think the job we did was really good, and the results, the fruit of this job are not just the buildings, not just the construction site. That's not most important. The most important is that we had our first graduation ceremony already this year. The students that studied at Skoltech, and these people are very well prepared, very well trained, future-oriented, and they got together in this place, in this university, after completing their specialist degrees or bachelor degrees somewhere else. And I think this place has given them enough capacity to continue on their career paths. And we continue our cooperation, and we're so lucky that our colleagues give such a high assessment of this joint work and joint collaboration. However, I'd like to say directly, the political situation in the recent times hasn't been a good one, and the relations between the United States of America and Russia leave much to be desired. But we continue to cooperate in the scientific environment, in science, in education, and I think it is extremely important to do so. It's important for the students, and it's also important to continue to strengthen this overall atmosphere of trust, of cooperation and collaboration between universities, between companies, corporations. So I think it's a very good example of collaboration and cooperation as such, and I only hope that we will continue to do so.
Thank you, Prime Minister. Perhaps if I could turn to you, Rafael. The Prime Minister referred there to the international political situation and the perhaps tensions, obviously, between the nations at this time. But Massachusetts Institute of Technology has continued its relationship with Skolkovo and maintained its very strong contribution to Scholartech. I'd like to ask you, firstly, why you wanted to maintain that, why you took the decision to stand by this project. And secondly, I'd like to hear your opinion of how you feel the program has progressed over the last 5 years in terms of the results and the quality of the students. But first of all, why you stayed on board.
Well, first of all, we believe that it's very important to maintain ties with talent worldwide in order to use science and technology to benefit society. Russia has a tremendous supply of talent and is a talent base that MIT would like to interact and collaborate with, and that's what we're doing, and we're very happy with the collaboration that has been built in the last few years. I think on the domain of the international issue and the diplomatic situation today, I believe it's safe to say that the cycles of international relations are typically shorter than the timescales in which you build great institutions. And it is particularly important when diplomatic and political dialogue becomes somewhat difficult. It's particularly important to even strengthen and maintain those educational and academic research collaborations, because that is important to build bridges that are much longer term than the international cycle we're living in today. So if MIT wants to, as we do, interact with the best talent worldwide to solve the most important challenging problems the world is facing, or to create the most important innovation, or to answer the most important questions, it is important that we engage internationally, and to us it's important to engage with an important country such as Russia with the talent base they have.
Do you feel, Rafael, that that you can access talent here in Russia with partnering with Skolkovo in a different kind of manner than any other? Do you think that there's talent here that is not available anywhere else?
Well, I think there is talent available worldwide. Talent is not focused, or it's not centralized only in Russia or in Moscow or in the United States. But I think it's important that when people in a nation and the leadership of a nation want to become more innovative, want to move to an innovative economy, a value-added economy, a knowledge-based economy, when a decision is made to do something like that, and not all nations in the world make that decision, that's exactly the spot in which we want to be. If they want to go there, we want to go there with them, so that we can learn from each other as we progress. We do things in a particular way in the United States that is very successful. We can learn on how other societies do things, and we can learn from each other. The core value that unites us is we want to work together towards a more innovation-based, knowledge-based society. So that is to me the most important part. And when Prime Minister Medvedev and the Russian government has said we want to move into a knowledge-based economy, that to me is critical, is necessary. That kind of vision for us to engage with them and try to do something together that we cannot do individually alone.
I see, and I'm presuming that you also feel that the program you've run in partnership with Skolkovo has been successful to date.
Yes, well, as I mentioned a few minutes ago, right now faculty have been hired, students have been recruited. So quite a few of them, more than 100 of them, have come to MIT. We know them. They are very innovative, very smart, a good talent pool that is only going to grow. So in my view, Skolkovo has accomplished a great deal. Could they have accomplished more? Well, at MIT and everywhere in the world, we always say we want to accomplish more, but they have accomplished a great deal, and I'm very confident that the foundations are there for a successful institution moving forward.
Well,
what I can add to that is only full agreement with what Mr. Reif have said. Political cycles are a different story. The world is one single global place now, and even when countries are at less than very good terms with each other, we are trying to maintain the level of scientific cooperation. And these projects like Skolkovo, this is a big investment into our common future of our countries and of our peoples. I think this is of great value, and this is going to be of great benefit to all people who make this investment now. This is why I'm sure that this project has a big future in front of it. And once again, I'd like to express my appreciation of your participation in implementing this.
Are you worried ever that some of your best students may skip over to MIT?
Well, I hope that someone from MIT will skip over to us. You know this. This is a two-way street. You just can't build a wall and tell people you have to stay at home. The world is one single global place, like I said, and the scientific world is an absolutely transparent world. When I visited the Silicon Valley and as I took a stroll among all the offices and looked at all those small cafes there, the crowd there were a pretty diverse lot. Europeans, Russians, Chinese, a lot of Americans, naturally. And I think this is normal for such environments, and I hope we will create such an environment here. And that means that some of the world-class students, of the world-class talent, who were educated at one point in the United States or in China or in other countries, if they continue their education here, well, and we do have some foreign students already, I think this will be the right thing.
Thank you, Prime Minister. On the line now we have Francis Gurry, who's the Director General of the World Intellectual Property Organization. WIPO has actually decided to move its Russian office to Skolkovo Technology Park. Francis, over to you.
Thank you very much, Mike. Well, this was a very important decision for us, and we think a very good decision. Intellectual property, we believe, is an essential step in commercializing technology. Let me say it's a necessary but not sufficient condition of a healthy innovation ecosystem. We see the great progress that has been made in Skolkovo. We very much welcomed the invitation of the Russian authorities to establish an office in the Russian Federation, and that office, which exists at the moment in Moscow, will move shortly to Skolkovo. What do we do as an organization? Well, we're an international organization, 188 member states, so basically the whole world. We provide important services to the global economy. We process around about 220,000 international patent applications every year, about 50,000 international trademark applications, international design applications. We provide dispute resolution services. We provide critical pieces of the soft infrastructure that underlies the operation of the intellectual property system worldwide. And importantly, we administer a number of treaties which together constitute the international framework, legal framework for intellectual property. We've heard from the Prime Minister and from President Reif of the important progress at Skolkovo. It is going to be undoubtedly one of the greatest centers of innovation in the world. We think it's particularly important to be able to add our services in that context, given the extremely rich and long history of Russia's involvement with science and contributions to science. Intellectual property can provide that mechanism which will assist in getting that strong tradition into the global marketplace. If I may, I think one of the challenging areas that we confront is, of course, the influence of the internet, and the influence of the internet in particular on institutions like copyright, and all of the innovations that we've seen in the commercialization of music, of films, of literature. Prime Minister Medvedev has provided thought leadership on this question in the past. He spoke about it at the Davos World Economic Forum several years ago, and I wonder if I may ask the Prime Minister for his thoughts on the direction of the legal framework or the regulatory framework for all of these innovations that are occurring with respect to content on the internet, given that this is really the most significant development in the democratization of knowledge and culture that has really occurred in the last 600 years.
Prime Minister.
Well, first of all, I'd like to welcome Mr. Gary once again, and I'd like to thank him for the decision to create a WIPO office here at Skolkovo. This is a great responsibility for us, and this is a great honor that such a high-profile international organization will be formally represented here. We hope it will be beneficial for all stakeholders in the issues of governance around intellectual property and so on. And we hope it will create a better situation for the protection of intellectual property in the Russian Federation. I mean the intellectual property created here and intellectual property created elsewhere, because like I said, all these intellectual property processes are of global nature. We have talked about this with Mr. Gary, and we have agreed that the times when global documents, regulatory documents on intellectual property were created, end of 19th century, mid-20th century, these times are long past. This new internet development, the internet has created a fantastic, transparent environment for new ideas and for implementing the new ideas. Also has a flip side. That flip side is that it's totally baffling in terms of how to regulate intellectual property, copyright, the right of the inventor, from the point of view of traditional conventional approaches. The internet, of course, we are aware that the internet was invented in a certain country and it was invented for a certain objective, right? But of course, it has overgrown that objective and it has overgrown that country. And what we are facing today and what we are dealing with today is a global network. However, there are no rules as to how to govern that network. In fact, there are two high-level approaches in the world today as to how to govern relationships around the internet and inside the internet. So the first approach is more or less laissez-faire. Don't mess around, don't try to, put your hand into that, right? And let it develop all by itself. The other approach is that at least some segments of the web must be regulated. Of course, I am closer to the latter point of view because I'm a government person, but that, of course, doesn't mean that we must bludgeon the internet into sort of state-like governance. However, there must be some legitimate rules. I don't think, just take the domain names registration system, I don't think that people could say that today's system for registering and assigning domain names and numbers is transparent. It is much less than transparent because it is focused in one country. Now that it is a global thing, we are aware that we have not given this mandate to one country, I mean the United States, of course. So we need to create some legal framework that for the future will determine how assigned names and numbers are actually assigned across the global web. The second important issue is, of course, the intellectual property. Is how we safeguard the intellectual property, the copyright, the rights of the inventors. This is an exceptionally difficult task. It is exceptionally difficult to do because we know that according to the conventional rules, the object of copyright is deemed created at the moment when the author presents it to a third party. However, previously, we did not have any means to document that. And that created an environment in which some intellectual property rights turned out to be under-safeguarded. Now that every such object becomes part of the global information field, this becomes, a legal issue already. Also, there are some rights to intellectual property that are already safeguarded by law. We know who the author is. However, inside the internet, these objects are used, rather freely, in a rather free and liberal manner, complying with copyright and sometimes not complying with copyright. And there are a range of approaches how to regulate and how to govern these relationships in the future. So we are only in the beginning of this very long journey. And this long journey should end up in a system that is acceptable to authors, to inventors, and which at the same time will not paralyze the usage of the intellectual property rights, which will not create any barriers on the way of people who want to legitimately use these intellectual property rights. How to do this? This is exceptionally difficult, and it will take time and a concerted effort of all countries involved and, of course, of WIPO.
Thank you, Prime Minister. You mentioned there that you said that there's some level of requirement for regulation. At the moment, you're now requiring Facebook and Google and Twitter to put servers into Russia, and that's a new requirement. Do you think that that is part of intellectual property rights? Do you think that might ever be relaxed at all? Or do you feel that that's now a kind of a requirement for the Russian state?
Well, you understand, every country has its own national requirements. Whether these requirements are too harsh or not too harsh, only practice can tell you. You know that we have this law. This law is already in force, and according to this law, all the databases concerning the private data of Russian citizens must be stored and located here in Russia. A lot of countries have such laws already. And I must tell you that many major companies, like Google, like other large companies, either migrate their servers to Russia or they look for local partners to do it here. And this is not a big cost. Some companies, there are some companies who are still sitting on the fence, they're still thinking about it. You've mentioned Twitter and Facebook. We do not want to squeeze anyone out of Russia. And we would like to welcome everyone who wants to do business legitimately in this country. I think all it takes is the will to look for a compromise, is the will to look for a mutually acceptable agreement to comply with the Russian regulations. They are quite manageable. I cannot see anything extra expensive in those rules and anything extra harsh in those rules. Well, a lot of people are thinking and talking about it much more than before, you know. We have just mentioned with Mr. Gary that WIPO is placing a representative office here. Just several years ago, just try to recall, national leaders and national governments were not so much involved in this. I went to G8, I went to G20 summits, I had a lot of bilateral meetings, and my attempts to get my partners involved in this, well, they faced this, really laissez-faire approach. Well, there are more important things now. Let's get back to that later when we have time. My opinion is that now it's time. It's high time we actually faced and addressed this issue, not just for our country, but for European countries, for the United States. I think it's high time for everyone.
Thank you, Prime Minister. And I presume, Francis Gary, that you have an optimistic outlook for Russia's compliance on world intellectual property rights going forward. Is that the case?
Yes, indeed. We believe that the Russian Federation is particularly constructive multilaterally, very engaged multilaterally. I'm very much grateful to the Prime Minister for, as I said, the thought leadership that he's providing in this area, moving us forward. I certainly agree with the Prime Minister that we're at the beginning of a long process. It's a global question. The Internet creates a global space, and we are stuck with territorial legal systems. There is a process of adaptation to that. And in that process, I think we have to ensure that the right set of balances between producers and consumers are achieved. And we think the Russian Federation's leadership in this area and taking us forward and making us think about these questions and making the world address them is extremely important and extremely constructive.
Thank you, Mr. Gary. And next up, we have with us Carlo Biondo, who is the European President of Strategic Relationships with Google. He's coming into our hangout from Spain. Sir, one of the things that you're very interested in, obviously, at Google is brand new innovations, and perhaps you'd like to speak to that subject.
Yes, yeah. First of all, I want to praise the spirit of Skolkovo, of openness to the world and innovation. I want to thank His Excellency for the opportunity to speak. I've read your article, Prime Minister, last week, in which you outlined two key priorities for Russia's strategic development. One of them is the importance of labor productivity growth, and the second one is the effectiveness of renewable energy solutions. What I would like to say is this, at Google we witnessed that labor productivity benefits from bringing together different skills, different abilities, and that digitalizing business is a very effective way to put those skills together. Collaborating with McKinsey, BCG, and other institutions, we learned that about 75% of the internet economic value falls on traditional businesses rather than IT itself. Companies which embrace digital technology grow 50% faster than others, and in the future, 80 to 90% of job, we think, will require ICT skills if we look at 2020. The way also in which services are being developed is changing because today technology learns from the real world and can predict trends. So music services can be adapted to people, or looking at a picture we can imagine what people are interested in and provide them some services. In addition to that, renewable energy is a very important topic for the world, and we see that computer science will more and more bring it. If we look at projects that we are doing, like Project Sunroof, or where we help property owners to switch to solar panels, or the technology used for private housing, public lighting, the importance in general of computer science is optimizing how we use resources looks to us extremely important, and we were very happy to see you outlining that. So I would have a question for you, Mr. Prime Minister, which is those technologies may take long time to enter in usage. You know, if we think at driverless car, or we think at virtual reality glasses or pharmaceutical solutions, it will take years. And my questions are two. One, do you think there will be continuing to be in Russia a focus on research work into technology of tomorrow long term? And how can foreign technology companies, or can companies like the one I work for, bring value to Russia and collaborate in a way that you feel would be productive and fair and good?
Прежде всего, господин Lazar Biondo, я хотел бы вас поблагодарить за то, что вы...
First, Mr. Lazar Biondo, I'd like to thank you for reading my article. It's always a pleasure when somebody is interested with what you did. In particular, it's of great pleasure that people abroad read my articles. Now, I don't see any other way for a country going forward but the way of innovations. And notwithstanding the fact that Russia was always considered as a large nation that sees its future in arms trading or oil and gas technologies, but it is becoming evident that without high-tech, we won't be able to get anywhere far in short-term and long-term. Now, as regards what we do now, and I mean we, the creators, those who create here in Skolkovo and those who create somewhere else in other scientific centers of Russia, it is clear that we have similar priorities, similar benchmarks, like in other large scientific and innovation centers around the globe. So our interests do match. And you've mentioned a couple of interesting technologies and ideas that are currently being actively investigated into, such as the usage of high-tech for driverless cars. Driverless cars is a very interesting and a very important way forward. It's a very interesting topic, and lots of research centers and companies and businesses look into it. And our companies and our industries are trying to pick it up, I mean, this topic, and put it high on the agenda, invest money into it. Now, talking about common and general approaches, we've actually set 5 main areas that we do research on here in Skolkovo, 5 major foresights. And these are different areas: biotech, space, energy, because we're still, and we remain to be, the largest energy supplier in the world, and it is clear that energy technologies do change, and they become more complicated, the complexity grows, and these energy technologies today create a new reality we have to live in, and so on and so forth. But, well, in this respect, we don't have to offer anything new, but I mean, nothing of novelty, but these are the main priorities, and we try to pursue these priorities. And we're so glad we have lots of cooperation opportunities with our partners, and we've met with them a number of times, and we've discussed possibilities of doing joint research, of doing joint businesses. And in the end, these partners help us commercialize some of the ideas we have here in Russia. Of course, business is a competitive world. But as far as the flip side of business is concerned, cooperation is what we do as well.
Prime Minister, you mentioned driverless cars, and Uber has invested heavily in driverless car technology along with Google. What would be your view on what would be the view of taxi drivers in Russia if driverless cars and Uber were ever to dominate?
Ну, значит, понятно, что каждый думает о своем рабочем месте.
It's clear that everybody tries to keep his own job, but nevertheless, such cars will appear. You can't stop the progress. You can't slow down the progress. 50 years ago, a vehicle without a horse was seen as a fantasy of something not real. Today, we all drive our own cars, we sit behind the wheel, we sometimes even drive helicopters and planes, and we think of it as something routine and standard. And I think in a number of years, this driverless car will become a very usual means of transportation. And I really want it. I mean, what I want is that all leading manufacturers, all leading car producers, all the states that set up the rules of this game, I want them to agree about the rules, how such driverless vehicles have to operate and how they have to be deployed, how they have to be used. And it's extremely important because in a number of countries and here in Russia, we have technologies that allow you to steer the car, but with the presence of a man, with the presence of a driver. This driver can just put his hands on his lap and look forward and just tweaking some knobs and levers, correcting the movement. But in a very nearest future, the driver will sit back and relax, or will just completely disappear, and then every vehicle, every transportation, every means of transportation, since it poses a great threat, it must follow some very specific and some very rigid rules. It has to follow some norms and regulations and technical regulations, and we must agree on it in the future as well.
Carlo, just turning back to you briefly, would you like to react to any of the Prime Minister's statements? On that front, is Google planning to bring its driverless cars over to Russia anytime soon?
First of all, Google doesn't plan to produce cars. It will be collaboration among different industries, and I just would like to reinstate what the Prime Minister just said. Collaboration is important. Skills that have to come to create that come from different worlds, and there needs to be an environment, security, and people are protected. What the Prime Minister said about innovation, which is something that when it brings progress should be pushed, is what we believe in. And what we want to do is to collaborate with other industries to bring technology where it can solve problems of the world, make economies. We were talking before about energy solutions, and I believe that Russia, in the value and importance as energy solutions, can bring a lot to the world, also in how to use them properly, how to make sure that energy is deployed in favor of humanity. And the fact of collaborating and being present and finding ways to, as the Prime Minister said, create the right compromises for which the world can be one single place is what excites me. On a personal note, I come to Russia every 6 to 8 weeks now, since 2 or 3 years. And I love to go there because there is a lot to learn. It's a fantastic country where there is a lot of people that are evolving incredibly fast in embracing the world. And I really hope that we can create with the Russian institutions the right conditions for which global companies like mine can contribute to the development of the economy and to sorting out problems for the people. It's a very exciting opportunity. And again, I love Russia and I come every 6 weeks. So if I didn't, I wouldn't do it.
I'm sure you come every 6 weeks, but Google has also found it difficult sometimes to convince Russian users to part with using other Russian search engines. Going forward, are you confident that you're going to be able to compete in the market? There are also some legal issues at the moment about how Google operates in Russia.
There are issues, there are challenges. There are always issues and challenges. The globe is not one single place. And facing those challenges by listening and by trying to find the right solutions is what we intend to do. We have made a lot of progress in Russia on our services. Competition is good. Local competition is good. We are here in Russia to try to improve and bring value. And I think that every year that passes, we can prove that we bring more and more value. So we are proud to come to Russia. It's not always easy. The world is not the same place. We don't have the same mentality. This diversity makes the world interesting.
Thank you, sir. We'll now turn to Ilya Sachkov, the CEO of cybersecurity group, Group IB, to talk about the ability for Russian companies to compete. Ilya, over to you.
Yeah, thank you, Mike. Dear Dmitry Anatolievich, my name is Ilya Sachkov. I'm 29. I like yoga and Thai boxing, and also I have more than 10 years experience in high-tech crime prevention and investigation business. I represent the Russian organization Group IB, more than 100 employees, Skolkovo resident, and Group IB for 10 years has worked in cybersecurity, specializing in preventing high-tech crime, identity theft, brand protection, anti-piracy, forensic, and cybercrime investigation. We not only protect Russian banks and corporations, but we also have customers here in the UK, in Europe, Latin America, and Australia. So today, hackers steal tens of billions of dollars from banks and individuals. They are also engaged in industrial espionage and sensitive data theft, such as documents from state agencies and industrial companies. So this topic is very actual. On behalf of Russian company with innovative products and international customers, I would like to ask a question. For 5 last years in Russia, many professionals continue to say that it's essential for private companies and government institutions to select a Russian-made products if this product is innovative and meets the requirement of organization. In reality, there is a strong stereotype in the heads of decision makers in Russia. They really afraid to select new products of young and innovative Russian companies. As an example, 2 years ago, Group IB with Skolkovo developed a unique system which solved the problem of internet banking fraud. We tried to sell this software to Ministry of Interior of Russia, to Central Bank, to Fin Monitoring, although this product was superior to others on the market. We were not successful in doing so in Russia. So I think it's almost impossible to sell something very innovative from Russian company actually working inside Skolkovo to MVD, FSB, to Central Bank. But there is a demand for these products outside in Russia, for example, here in the UK. And this same situation can be found when we're considering our intrusion detection system, BotTrack TDS. Only Rostech has recently started using BotTrack TDS, but many Russian government companies continue to buy systems from other countries and companies. So my question is, what changes should we see in Russia state institution to not be afraid of buying Russian innovative products, especially in the field of information security? What should we do, like a very, not young, but young by age, the medium age now company in 27. So what can government do to help us? And maybe you will have time to visit our office in Moscow. Thank you very much.
Prime Minister.
Да, спасибо, Илья.
Yes, thank you, Ilya, for the invitation.
Я не думаю, что если американская компания,
I don't think,
занимается кибербезопасностью, хорошая молодая компания,
an American company that does cybersecurity, I don't think if it wants to sell its product to FBI or Federal Security Agency or CIS or whatever, it will be definitely under scrutiny, and it won't do it so easily, because if you want to get access to state systems, to state customers, they are much more conservative than the private market. But I think the state agencies must be definitely more attentive to companies that offer their solutions to them, such as anti-piracy solutions, internet piracy, I mean, or modern means of protection. What shall we do, and what shall we do for the state agencies to become more lenient towards these innovations? A couple of years ago, I made a couple of decisions here in Skolkovo so that large state agencies, bodies, non-for-profit ones, invested the majority of their resources into startups, into companies like ours. The next objective would be to get these products finally from the startups and to start using them more actively. But again, the companies, the startups, need to demonstrate that their products are the best in the market. the best of class. And we have tender procedures for that, we have bid competition procedures, and we have rules to follow. I can agree that not always the best product is high on demand. Lots of things depend on the mentality of people, I mean, those decision makers and the connections you have. But it's not purely Russian problem. You know, those who produce software, they also have to compete, and in order to prove that you're the best, lots of time and efforts has to be spent on it. But then, still, I believe that recently we've made the state companies, state corporations, to start doing R&D and involve Russian startups in it. You've mentioned Rostec. They're quite a big consumer of innovative products, and through them and via them you can get access to other state bodies, and they have a good database of potential customers, and I'm pretty sure they will be interested in what you have to offer.
No problem.
Thank you very much.
Ilya, do you have any feedback on what the Prime Minister said?
We are ready to compete because we already listed like a top 7 cyber intelligence company in the world. But strange thing that we more successful outside in Russia, but we are a Russian company. It's something like very strange situation. But totally, I agree. We should work, and Rostec is a good place to start. So I think we will be next Kaspersky. Thank you.
Good luck. Good luck, and I'm very, very sorry, everyone. I do apologize.
I really wish you the best luck to become a next Kaspersky, so that there is good attitude to you, not only to those companies from state quarters and from every quarters.
Thank you. Right, moving on. We now have, at the recent Skolkovo Startup Village, excuse me, I'm terribly sorry about this. There were many delegations from Asia. So the question is, can Russia look towards the East now, especially in the current political situation? We now have Yusuke Otsubo, Managing Partner for UMJ Russia Fund, to pose a question on this. Not on this.
Okay, thank you, Mike. My name is Yusuke Otsubo, Managing Partner of UMJ Russia Fund. I'm involved in Russian business almost 20 years, and most of the time I'm engaged in startup investment in Russian technologies. Today, my question today is about the high-tech development in the Far East area. In early September, Russian government organized the big conference, East Economic Forum in Vladivostok. And I know it was very successful. Now, I believe the Far East is a new and promising frontier for Russia. But in the Far East, there are many tigers. I don't mean the white Amur tigers, but the economic tigers like China, South Korea, Taiwan, Singapore, and of course Japan. I should say it is very difficult for Russia to compete with these tigers in manufacturing, because Russia has no competitive advantage in production technologies, unfortunately. But on the other hand, Russia has educational advantage, especially in high-tech research and development. By utilizing this strengths, Russia can collaborate with these tigers in the Far East successfully, or even taming these tigers. So, Prime Minister, what do you think about the idea to establish a high-tech R&D center, I mean another academic Garatok, in the Far East? Thank you.
Я думаю, что
Thanks, Mr. Otsubo, for that.
можем сотрудничать со
I
всеми
think there is
упомянутыми
room for our cooperation with all the tigers in that jungle.
совместный бизнес в сфере
Cooperate
высоких
in
технологий
high-tech
в
businesses
самом различном
and
направлении.
elsewhere.
Благо, как вы сказали, научно-исследовательские
Because,
работы, опытно-конструкторские
like you've
работы,
mentioned,
вообще,
there
весь
is
творческий процесс
a lot of R&D
является
expertise.
сильным, таким местом, сильной позицией
There is a lot of
участников.
scientific
Гораздо
expertise
стоит
in Russia.
коммерциализации,
Of course, we are less strong on commercialization. We are less strong in implementing the ideas. And this is exactly what we think we have to learn from Japan, from Korea, from China, from some other countries, from our neighbors in the region.
Можно, конечно, создавать и новые центры, но
Of
мы
course,
довольно
one can
ограничены
create
деньгами.
new centers in the Far East or wherever. However, we have already investment, a lot of money, and a lot of our intellectual resource and capacity in Vladivostok. I think you know that we have a big university campus there, the Far Eastern Federal University. This is not just a university. It now employs a lot of very good experts from Moscow and from other parts of Russia. It has a lot of visiting professors from other countries, primarily from the Asia-Pacific countries. And I think this is where we need to cooperate, and we invite you to do so.
Mr. Otsubo, do you have a reaction?
Okay, thank you so much. Yes, Tokyo and Vladivostok is just 1 hour half flight. So I hope many of Japanese companies or Japanese universities will collaborate with the Far Eastern universities.
Mr. Otsubo, can I ask you a question?
Yes.
Have you noticed an increase in the number of Russian companies and Russian venture capitalists working in Japan or in Asia?
Unfortunately, I don't know any Russian investors in Japan, in Tokyo.
Perhaps you will see that change.
Oh, but I can find a lot of Russian entrepreneurs here, many IT sectors.
Very interesting.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, Mr. Otsubo.
Thank you.
Moving on, we have, obviously, Skolkovo has employed the creation of a very large facility here and the creation of its own cluster. And we have now on the line Louis Sanz, the Director General of the International Association of Science Parks, to pose a question. I think Louis is coming in from Spain. And so over to you, sir.
Thank you, Mike. Good day again, Mr. Prime Minister. Yes, well, I think I'm very pleased to share with you all the fact that Skolkovo Technopark and Skolkovo Foundation is a member of our international association. But more than that, there are many other technoparks and similar organizations joining our association. Our growth in terms of membership in Russia has been staggering, I would say, in the last days, and that growth in membership is entailing a growth in activities. One of them, for example, is the fact that we will host our annual meeting next year, which is a pretty big event in Moscow, organized by Skolkovo. So it's for me tremendously important and a great pleasure to be sharing this time with Prime Minister Medvedev. Mr. Prime Minister, let me tell you a little short story, which I think is pertinent to the discussion today. When I was a very little kid, many years ago, really many years ago, I think I must have been 6, not more than 7 years old. I was taking a stroll with my dad in a hot summer night in Valencia, my hometown, by the seaside. And suddenly my dad pointed a finger at the sky and asked, "Do you see that?" And I looked and I saw indeed a little round glittering object moving through the sky, and I asked, "What is that?" And then he said, "What? That is the Sputnik. The Russians have sent that to spies to do this and that." And he went on to explain And that moment has remained with me ever since. I remember very distinctly, I was looking in absolute awe for two reasons. Reason number one, because that moment triggered in me the immense desire of being able to leave the surface of Earth and go into air and to space. I couldn't become an astronaut for obvious reasons, but I did eventually become a pilot. That has been one of the greatest sources of joy in my life. The second is because despite my young age, I somehow realized how much knowledge and science and technology such a thing requires. So to me, it has been always clear that science and technology is very serious business in Russia. What I don't know from you is that you just went on that particular point right a few seconds ago, but the other side of the coin is how good is Russia to transform all that huge amount of knowledge and technology into economic development, into the creation of companies, the creation of wealth. And that requires a number of tools, a number of policies. There are many elements that any society and any country needs indeed to have in place to create an environment that is conducive to that end. Now, one of these elements has to do with laws and regulations. And I would like to hear from you, what's your view regarding how friendly are Russian laws today vis-a-vis people that want to create businesses, that want to develop enterprises? How much have you been able to smoothen the bureaucratic obstacles that are typically connected to these processes? What can you tell me about that?
Thank you, Mr. Sanz, for your great attention to our country. And I'd like to use this occasion to invite you and all our partners out there, all our watchers and all people who take an interest to our forum, Open Innovations Forum, which will take place next month, late next month. There will be a lot of guests, a lot of networking, a lot of interesting solutions, and I think it will bring us closer together, will bring about more scientific and technological cooperation on top of that. You have mentioned the legal basis, the legal framework, including the high-tech legal framework of Russia. Whether commercialization of these technologies has been really well legally frameworked, whether it is really conducive towards making ideas a commercial product. Russia has a very big and rich scientific past. A lot of Russian scientific achievements have been worth, really, of Nobel Prizes and other prizes. A lot of Russian scientists have brilliantly solved a lot of basic research problems. However, we have never been particularly strong in bringing all this into the commercial realm. There are a lot of examples when a scientific discovery was made in this country, but that discovery was later used in other countries. There are quite a few such examples. And I think it is very important now to make sure that any scientific development created here could be developed further into a commercial product also here, to make sure that the journey between the idea and the product and the market is as short as possible. Of course, with the premise that the invention itself is viable and commercializable, so to say. What can I say about our legal framework evolution? We have lately changed a lot of copyright laws, a lot of basic research laws. We have made a lot of amendments to our civil code and so on. But this is not the most important thing, I think. The most important thing is not to change the laws, it's to change the mindsets of people. is to try to persuade them to go on with their creativity, to unleash their creativity by showing them that this can evolve into some production, into something that is feasible and into something that you can see and feel. It's not about having the right laws, it's about having the will to do this on the part of people. I think we're all aware that back in the 1990s, people who created companies, who created businesses here in Russia did not care about investing in something really complicated. They did not care about startups. They did have startups, but their only goal was to make as much money as possible. However, this situation has really changed in the past decade or 15 years. I know a lot of people from the business community who really take an interest in investing in science and technology and try to make sure the ideas that are created there in the scientific realm are commercialized. This applies to private businesses primarily, and we are trying to make sure in the government now to sort of persuade the Russian state companies to do the same thing, to do commercialize things.
Thank you, Prime Minister. We're now conscious of time, so we're moving to our last additional guest. We're now joined by Craig Barrett, the co-chairman of Skolkovo Foundation Council and the retired CEO and chairman of Intel Corporation, the obviously very well famous technology company, and who has something to ask about regarding science. Over to you, Mr. Barrett.
Well, first of all, let me mention that it's been a pleasure working with Victor Vekselberg and the Skolkovo Council over the last 5 years. A lot of discussion today on the successes of Skolkovo. It's clear that it's a long-term project. Silicon Valley was not created in 5 years. It took many decades. It'll take constant reinforcement and support for Skolkovo to achieve something similar to Silicon Valley. One of the interesting aspects about innovation, though, is where the basic ideas come from. They come from government investment in research and development at the basic level. In the United States, there's a lot of discussion today about doubling the federal investment in research and development. The European Union has goals for what percentage of gross national product should be invested in R&D. The Chinese are investing. Very simple question, Mr. Prime Minister. Are you willing to double the federal investment in R&D in Russia in your universities and your Russian Academy of Science laboratories? You can just give me a simple yes or no answer.
Mr. Barrett, first of all, I'd like to thank you for all the things that you've done for us, together with Mr. Vekselberg. As co-chairpersons, you did a lot of important things. This was a key period for Skolkovo to really get some earth under its feet as an innovation center, and we hope it will continue. As to your question, how many millions we're planning to invest, it's not going to be millions, Mr. Barrett. It's going to be billions. Even in the current difficult budgetary and economic times, which our country is experiencing right now, I can tell you quite frankly and directly that we are aware of the utmost importance of financing and supporting university science, basic research. So the overall plan for 2016 is to at least maintain the proportion of science investment as a percentage of the budget, which was really a difficult decision to make, considering the current economic environment. So we are not decreasing state investment in science, and as we get new resources from anywhere, we will invest part of that back into science, because we are aware that state investment in basic research is very, very important for this country. I think any government does that. I was pretty surprised when I asked a question in one American university, what is the proportion of state orders in the overall amount of money that your university gets? And I almost expected to hear some modest proportion, because America is famous for its private businesses and private science. They told me 90% of our orders is of state-run nature. This, I think, is a very good example that can be instrumental in making decisions for our future as well. There are some places in the scientific realm where private businesses can make a difference. However, the government is in any case responsible for financing the basic research before private businesses come in, before private businesses join. Some parts of science are not interesting to businesses. Some parts of science businesses just cannot see. So I think this is how we will make sure that our basic research is financed well.
Thank you, Mr. Barrett, for your question. Well, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for participating in this roundtable discussion with Prime Minister Medvedev and our invited guests on Russia's future innovation culture and policy. I'd like to thank you, Prime Minister, and all our participants for their time and insights, and hopefully we'll return to these topics at some point in the future. And of course, I'm sure that many of these topics will be discussed at the Open Innovations Forum here in Moscow on September the 28th. From now, me, Mike Butcher from TechCrunch, thank you and goodbye.
Thank you.
See you.